All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is the Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee. I'm Ryan Kirchhoff, the chair. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We will have a video recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. Roberta, could you please call the roll?
Sure. David,
Yes.
Michael,
Here.
Joe,
Yeah.
Carlos,
Here.
Mary Jo,
Here.
and Ryan.
Present. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from June 25th, a meeting at which I was not present, so I will cede the floor. Any comments or questions about the draft minutes?
I only had one question, but I was not present. Agenda item number 2, the summation that you had, Roberta, it trailed off at the end, and I wondered, did I get maybe an earlier draft or something?
Let me take a look at it.
The last sentence just kind of ends, but it's not like end. And I thought I missed something perhaps, but I didn't know. It was a budget update description.
Let me see what I gave you.
Mary Jo, I see the same thing. It says the committee members requested that information about the, and then
Yeah, and I was like, what?
I don't know what happened. Okay, well,
Okay.
I appreciate that. And maybe we can hold on to these minutes and approve them next time, and I'll find out what's missing. And I won't ask you to approve minutes that I have not properly given you.
It works for me. Michael, did you have any other comments on this? I saw your hand up. Was that it?
Thanks. No, I also had one other. It's a little bit more nitpicky. In the first block with the roll call, it claims that you were there, Ryan, to ask for the meeting to be opened, and obviously you were not there. So I think that needs to be changed to Eric.
Thank you. I will make a note of that, and I will give you all corrected minutes next time.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we can, I think, move on unless there's anything else. I'll pause one last second. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay, very good. Thank you. So we have a very packed agenda of items that I think most of these will be able to breeze through relatively quickly, but I will do my best to keep us moving through these as we have whatever it is, 9 or 10 bullet points on our agenda for tonight. First, though, I'm gonna hand over. We have the Affordable Housing Trust annual report presentation, which I think we all look forward to seeing what the Housing Trust has been up to and how our money relates to their mission. So I believe we have Lisa Davidson, right, from the Housing Trust. Lisa, if you want to take over, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for the invite. And so this is my first time going through the meeting, through the report. Please let me know if I'm giving you too much or not enough. Happy, there's always that fine balance, right? So in the report, we gave a summary of the FY 24 funds, just kind of through June 2024. And then we also gave you the what we have for revenues in FY 25. I'm going to focus more on 25. We had combined resources between non-CPA trust, CPA trust, bank loan, bank interests, and flex rental assistance. And the flex rental assistance came to the trust through the city of Somerville's appropriation. So there was like 15 million point, let's round it up to 15,900,000 to work with. During the course of the fiscal year, we had two from the CPA appropriation. We received $1,468,693. And that had the deduction of the debt collection, debt services that we have for two bonds. The first bond was taken out, I think in FY14, maybe. And then the other one was in FY24, and we just started paying, or FY22, and we just started paying those expenses. Let's see, programs that we were funded. There were lots of programs, lots of developments that were funded through. Commitments were made for 42 Webster Ave. Most of it was non-CPA dollars. Actually, all of it was non-CPA dollars. Just to start, we funded a housing development at 297 Medford Street. And that again was all trust funding. The 24 Webster Ave again was funded through trust. Cross Street development, it was funded through both trust monies and CPA monies. Housing, and then we have the projects that were previously funded. Just give you a little bit of an update on that. In previous years, we funded the Waterworks 2 housing development, which I think is 21 housing units made affordable through elderly disabled housing through the Somerville Housing Authority. And that is coming to close to a close. They're getting ready to lease up, which is really exciting. We funded 299 Broadway with a little bit of trust money as well as CPA dollars. $1.5 million worth of CPA dollars were at 299 Broadway. That one right now is still sort of on a hold while they're trying to find other funding sources to fill in a gap. There's the Lowell, we funded the Lowell Street, 259 Lowell Street. It's a VNA/wind development project where we're going to be creating more affordability in that property. Somerville YMCA, we gave an acquisition loan to them for them to purchase a property on School Street, and those 9 units there are made affordable. 12 Pleasant Ave, also another acquisition loan through Somerville Community Land Trust. They're purchasing that property, and they're going to be turning it over to first-time home buyers. Some of the programs that were funded, which most of the programs have been really funded through the CPA dollars. The CPA Pass program is operated by Somerville Homeless Coalition, where they offer up to 24 months worth of rental assistance to prevent homelessness, and as well as take people out of homelessness and house them. A new program that was just funded through to the Somerville Homeless Coalition is called the Emergency Resident Displacement Prevention. And this one is in response to some of the things that are happening in the federal administration and the unable to pay for people who may not have documentation. So with our CPA dollars there, we're going to assist with paying those rental dollars, so they are not displaced from their housing. CPA leasing differential, that is a program that has been happening for a while. It funded through the CPA. It helps the Somerville Homeless Coalition really make sure that they're able to pay the market rents for the units here in Somerville that they're renting with their leasing dollars for HUD. HUD only allows them up to the FMR, the fair market rate. So they need a little bit more of a cushion to make sure that they're able to house people here in Somerville. And then the PASS program has been duplicated with Community Action Agency of Somerville, which again is a 24-month process, really keeping people housed, and really the expansion of the program with CAS has really allowed us to serve more households, prevent more households from becoming homeless, excuse me. And then there's the 100 Homes Management Contract, which goes through to the Somerville Community Corporation, which the city of Somerville has partnered with SEC in buying property off the market to convert them into affordable housing. And this is really a huge effort for to avoid displacement. These management contracts is really the monies that go in and for the legwork to create these housing opportunities. Am I giving you too much information? Are we okay? Okay.
Oh, this is really helpful. Thank you.
All right, perfect. And as I said, I just give you like, I sort of gave the brief updates as I was going along, but I will continue to do so. Just to reiterate, 299 Broadway sort of is in a hold while they're looking for other funding to fill that gap. 259 Lowell Street, they just secured some of their other financing needs, and that will be to rehab the elderly disabled housing over in on Lowell Street and deepening some affordability. Early action acquisition fund, some of YMCA, 12 Pleasant Street, and 297 Broadway, 297 Medford Street. So we're really excited about that. Under our programs, I'll give you a number of units that were created with the funding for affordable housing units. The 100 Homes Initiative created 58 units of housing. The Waterworks Phase 2 created 25 units of housing. 163 Glen Street created 6 first-time home buyers opportunities. Clarendon Hill Rental created 38 new, that's the phase 1 over at Clarendon Hill, created 38 new rental units. They are actually starting to rent up as well too. They're doing their lottery and all that fun stuff. So it's really exciting. And 299 Broadway, when that is up, got all their funding in place, that will create 115 affordable units here in Somerville. And I think I've said everything else, and sort of I'm happy to continue on, but I feel like I'll start repeating myself and I don't want to do that. So do you have questions about the report, questions about the funding sources?
Yeah, I definitely have some, but I'm going to let my colleagues chime in here first if anybody has any questions for Lisa. Mary Jo?
Yes, I had a quick question. I was listening as you went over 259 Lowell, and I'm very familiar with that project, having known it when it was first created more than 20 years ago. But if I heard you right, it wasn't creating more units, but it was increasing the affordability, if I heard you right. And maybe it's changed over the years, because like I said, I remember it when it was first constructed and so on. But it was for low and very low income seniors. So I didn't know, what do you do to increase the affordability if it was already kind of set up in that way, or have things changed so much that you just need even more subsidy?
So they're taking the VNA is selling the property to Wingate. Wingate is going to be doing some major work that hasn't been able to be done in quite some time. I just want to sneak a peek, make sure that I did not misspeak and say deepen the affordability, because I was at that meeting and I feel like it was adding more units. I don't think the whole property is affordable, but let me get that answer back to you.
I'd be really surprised at that, but once again,
Yeah.
I've lost track. It's been a long time. I just remember it being developed for low and very low. I don't recall there being any market rate, but I could be wrong. You know what? I think I am wrong, because I remember Linda Cornell, who was formerly the president of the VNA, explaining that they did have some folks that paid full freight, and that helped with those that were subsidized. So maybe.
But I'll get clarity and just double check for you and give it to Roberta, just to dot our I's and cross our T's.
Okay. Thanks, Mary Jo.
Yeah.
Anybody else with questions? Michael?
Thank you. Sorry, I can't find the fun emoji that Mary Jo found earlier for my hand, so you're just going to have to deal with my regular one for now. I love this report. This is really, really helpful, especially as a relatively new member. This continues to help me understand the depth of the work that you guys do, and it's just fantastic stuff. I'm really excited about it. I know one of the things that came up during our initial discussions around appropriation and how much to give the trust, there was some concerns about ARPA funds kind of drying up. And I found the relative sources of funding chart from 2014 to now very, very helpful. I was wondering if you can give me some perspective about how much of the bars there were ARPA funds. I don't think they're delineated out that way.
So they are not, and I may have it open because I know that the ARPA funds, and I don't have it open already. I had it
That's
open
okay.
earlier, anticipating this, but I can get you. I know that like the MRVP program, that's the municipal rental voucher program. I think MRVP, yeah. MVP, I'm sorry, municipal voucher program that was funded through the a combination of a couple of funding sources. It was OPER, it was city funding, and trust funding going in. So they had different pots of money in there. And then the Flux funds was another one that was through city appropriation, but I don't think it was OPER.
Okay. I also found the individual project updates super helpful as well. I know it's something that we do for the full CPC in another forum, and getting those project updates is huge. I think it's great stuff. For 299 Broadway specifically, that is just like such a great project for us, right? There's so many units. There's a lot of time and attention put into that effort. I wanted to kind of approach this from two dimensions. One is a little bit of a carrot, one's a little bit of a stick. And I'll start with the stick one. I know in there it kind of looks like the funds have been used, but it almost looks like the CPA funds could somehow be clawed back if the project doesn't move forward. Is that correct? It looks like the actual final amount that comes from CPC versus not CPC funds looks like TBD. Is there a world where if they say stall the project for a decade that you might elect to take those funds back in some form?
So every commitment letter does have an expiration date, right? Because
Okay.
we want to sort of keep it and it keeps the developers sort of, I don't want to say on their toes, but keeps them there to make sure that they're informing us of what is happening with the project, where they are in the development, and so it keeps the communication open. If I mean, I cannot confidently answer that question with a yes or no question. Yes or no.
Okay, that's helpful. And like I said, I also want to talk about this from a care perspective. Do you know relatively how much more funding they need? Is there a world where we can kind of help bridge that gap to get that project over the line?
That is a great question, and that question continues to change. The amount. Let me rephrase that. The amount continues to change. I think I would have to get back to you with the latest number. And the city is really, really trying to work and trying to find different ways to sort of move the project along as well.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that update. And, for what it's worth, as one committee member, I would be super supportive to find any ways to enable that. So just putting that out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Lisa, I just wanted to ask, are all the funds awarded, excluding the rental assistance and some of the programmatic funds, do they all go out the door as loans, or are they're
Yes.
grants as well? They are loans.
Yes, we do. The only ones like the programs are grant funded, right? The rental assistance and whatnot, but all our acquisition loans, our development, they're all loans. They do have very low interest rates, and we're usually the funding source that kind of gets it over the hill, right? So when it comes down to repayments, the cash flow, it's always based on cash flow. We tend to take the back seat to the larger lenders.
Yep, understood. So not must pay loans, they're cash flow, repayment, deferred. Yeah, understood. Okay. Any other questions for Lisa? All right. Well, thank you very, very much, Lisa. It's always great to hear from the trust and hear of all the amazing work that you're doing, and glad to be a part of it with the funds that we appropriate. So thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for your continued support. I mean, the trust can't do what we do nearly as much as what we do without the CPC's support. So thank you.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, with that, I will move along in our agenda. Next up on here, proposed changes to the HTMOA general conditions. This is related to interest generated on CPA funds, and I think I'll turn over to Roberta if you want to, or if you're able to give any context for folks that are maybe not familiar with this issue.
Sure, thank you. And I apologize again that my camera is going to be off today because it just doesn't want to show my face today. So I'll explain the background of this. First of all, there's a lot of acronyms which give a lot of people headaches. So AHT is Affordable Housing Trust. MOA is Memorandum of Agreement. And every time the Community Preservation Committee transfers money to the Affordable Housing Trust, that transfer is accompanied with what is the equivalent of a grant agreement, the Memorandum of Agreement, which states all of the conditions that apply to the funds that have been transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust. In the very beginning, the Community Preservation Committee drafted the conditions of their grants together and approved the conditions that were used for grant agreements, memoranda of understanding, or memoranda of agreement with the city or with the Affordable Housing Trust. And over time, there have been discussions and tweaks about changes to these general conditions. We've talked about some of the general conditions ourselves in previous meetings, but not the general conditions that apply to the Affordable Housing Trust. So I did include the Memorandum of Agreement general conditions in the meeting packet. Let me know if you'd like me to share that as we talk about it. So there were a couple of items. So over the last month, I've had reason. Actually, this goes back to, I don't remember how many of you were here perhaps a year ago when we had Paul Goldstein, who last presented the Affordable Housing Trust's annual plan, flagged that there was interest that was owed by the Affordable Housing Trust to the CPC because it stated in the Memorandum of Agreement that any interest earned on CPA funds by the Affordable Housing Trust should be returned to the CPC. And so we weren't able to come to find the answer to the question of how much interest there was and how to transfer it back to the CPC. So that's been on the back burner for a while. Some of you may remember that issue coming up. So in the last month, we've wanted to bring this up again and sort it out. And in so doing, I went back through minutes of CPC meetings that talked about Affordable Housing Trust general conditions going back to the very beginning. And what I found was that there were a few subjects that had been discussed by the CPC about wanting to change these general conditions, including the subject of signage for CPA-funded affordable housing projects and the annual reporting requirements that have been discussed previously by the CPC. So for example, the last few years, we've been receiving annual reports once a year, And it states in the general conditions that the Affordable Housing Trust should come and report to the CPC twice a year. With some negotiation, after I came on board, I developed this template that was used for the trust report that gives us all of the information that we need. And there's been a lot of difficulty in the past with getting this information organized in this fashion once a year, let alone twice a year. So previously, the committee had agreed a few years ago that once a year would be sufficient if it was in this format. And that agreement was never codified in the general conditions. The general conditions still say that it would be twice a year. And with respect to signage, there's been a lot of discussion about whether it's appropriate to put signs, CPA signs, on every house that has been assisted with Community Preservation Act funding, if that denotes that this is an affordable unit, because the goal is to keep the affordable units indistinguishable from any other units. And so we had discussed, I've discussed with stakeholders and, whether there might be other alternatives for advertising the use of CPA funds. And it might be appropriate for, say, the Housing Authority building to have a sign saying that the Mystic Water Works was funded by CPA, but we might not hold SCC to put signage on all of the 100 homes units. So the suggestion was to make the signage be at the discretion of the developer rather, or the agency that is building the units, rather than putting it on every sign. And this is another issue that had been discussed by previously by the CPC, but hadn't been reflected in the change. But nowhere in the discussion did I find a discussion about a requirement for the Affordable Housing Trust to return interest to the CPC. This was an item that was added to the general conditions first in 2018 for the first time, and was effective starting in FY19. And like I said, as far as I can tell, this has never been discussed by the CPC. I don't have any record explaining why it was introduced. And I've discussed this with the coalition and with our law and finance departments. And the recommendation from all of them is that we shouldn't be doing this. And they recommend that we remove that requirement from the general conditions for the Affordable Housing Trust. And meanwhile, our accounting department has done the research and identified that a total of $264,327 has been interest has been withheld from the Affordable Housing Trust since 2019, most of that coming in the last 2 years when interest rates have gone up. Very little interest accrued prior to that. So that cumulative 5 years worth of interest never was put into the trust accounts. And now they would like to transfer from the CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust that amount of interest, because it's their position that it never should have been in our conditions in the first place. And in fact, they went ahead and made that transfer because end of fiscal year, we had the funds in 2025. We would have had to wait until the end of the next fiscal year to make that effective after the committee has a chance to vote on changing the general conditions. Ryan.
Roberta, can you confirm for the group how that $200,000+ transfer would affect our pot of available funds for this year that we have voted on allocating?
Yes, I can. Thanks for that question. The funds, so I should have actually queued this up. I'm gonna quickly share our annual fall report from last year that shows where all of the different pieces of revenue come from. And I'm going to share a screen. Okay. So you should be seeing now the 2025 fall report, FY25 fall report. And so table 1 of the report, this is showing last year's revenue, but I'm using this to demonstrate what the revenue, like what the different sources of revenue are that we have. So the budget for FY26 is similar to what's shown in table 1. We just appropriated $5.8 million for FY26 based on an estimated property tax surcharge revenue for the coming year. And so the estimated property surcharge revenue is the budget that we have for FY26 right now. But at the end of the year, accounting looks at a number of different revenue sources that were not included in that estimate. And so table 2 shows how we add revenue from other sources that weren't anticipated in the budget. That includes additional assessment revenue above and beyond what we estimated, tax title redeemed liens, so people who are paying their CPA taxes later than they were supposed to have, tax title interest likewise, and then CPA interest and investment income. And it comes from these two revenue lines. So these are revenue lines that the accounting department doesn't look at until the close of the fiscal year, and we've just closed FY25. So when I make this report this year, this November, these 2 items, whatever would be in those 2 items, is going to be reduced by the amount of the that was just transferred back to the Affordable Housing Trust. It happened that what was in these accounts right now was enough to cover the interest owed to the Affordable Housing Trust in FY25. So when I make this table 2 this fall, it's going to be the unappropriated revenue is going to be lower than what would have been otherwise.
Okay. But to summarize for the group, it sounds like the expectation is that this will not have an effect on the funds that we have appropriated via our vote 2 months ago, correct?
Correct.
All right.
And I would also like to open and share with you the actual can't think and act at the same time. The draft, the general conditions that I've just been talking about, because after answering any further questions that committee members have about these changes in the general conditions, I'd like to ask for a vote to approve the new general conditions as I've shown in the meeting packet.
Great. And to summarize again, just make sure folks are following the 2 things that are changes in this general conditions that Roberta would like a vote on are 1, the treatment of the interest, as was just described, which will not affect our allocation of funding to evaluate and award projects this year. And part two is about signage for CPA funded affordable housing projects and basically deferring to the owner or developer on whether and how they would like to put signage up related to CPC funds.
Thank you. And the third thing is to codify an annual report from the Affordable Housing Trust once a year.
So maybe let's pause there and see if any comments or reactions to any of those three things that we would be voting to approve. Michael.
Thank you. And thank you for summarizing that. It was very, very helpful. I just had one question on the history around the interest. Is there a reason why we previously had this paradigm of not surrendering that interest to the trust?
I have not been able to uncover the reason. So as I mentioned, this was added in 2018, and I have not been able to find any discussions or requests either with the CPC nor with any other city staff that would explain why the interest item was added to the general conditions. And I've never found any discussion with the CPC about the addition of the general conditions or the addition of interest to this.
Did you reach out by any chance to Michael Fager, who might have been the whatever the chairperson was at that time?
I did not.
So, because I still see him regularly. I could kind of my guess. I mean, if I were to speculate, I'm wondering if there was like a situation where we found that we were transferring money to the Affordable Housing Trust and they weren't spending it very expeditiously and it was growing, and there was a decision that they shouldn't get to keep that money or something like that. So it might have been, kind of what we were talking, what we've also grappled with in some of our special, conditions of trying to make sure money is expeditiously used.
Yeah.
One could conjecture another likely possibility is some confusion over the fact that if the it does state in the CPA legislation that interest accrued to the CPA should stay with the CPA and not accumulate in the general fund. But in this case, this is different because once the funds are transferred to the trust, then the funds belong to the trust and not to the CPC anymore. And either way, it's not going into the general fund.
Yeah.
So if we're treating the trust like a grantee, we have given it to them, and it's not typical for there to be takebacks once we've given it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. And David, I appreciate you highlighting that could be one of the goals of the mechanism here. I'm comfortable, again, as one member, with proceeding with this interest clause under the paradigm that we could just reduce future funding if it's not being spent. So for what it's worth, I'm on board.
Thanks, Michael. Any other questions or comments? Okay. And I'll just say, personally, regarding the signage piece, as a developer of affordable housing personally that has used CPC funds in a number of different communities, I think this flexibility would be well received. I'll also say personally that I have always wanted to put up a sign acknowledging CPC funds as a means of demonstrating that the CPC funds are appreciated, and that when we're back in the community the next time, we want folks to know that their dollars have been put to good use. So, anyways, I hope that the developers here would continue to see that.
As a follow-up, Ryan, have you found that there are homeowners or apartment renters that have resisted and have not wanted their homes so labeled?
Well, all projects that I've ever worked on are rental affordable housing. So they're it's multifamily rental housing. But no, I've never heard any objection to this. I don't honestly know if even the folks that are living there necessarily notice. I almost think of it more as for the surrounding community to see where their dollars have been spent.
So I'm kind of curious where the suggestion that we remove the requirement is kind of coming from.
So one of my goals when I first came into this role was to try to get 100% compliance on CPA signage at buildings because it's in all of our grant agreements. And at the time I started, very few sites actually had signage of any of the program areas. And when I approached the housing division, I received pushback on putting signage at particularly the 100 homes locations, because the Somerville Community Corporation had not felt that it was appropriate to put a sign on their house saying that this is an affordable unit, essentially. And that may also be true of some of the non SCC units that people might not otherwise know that those are affordable housing developments if it's not labeled as such. But some, as Ryan points out, some properties might be really proud to show that their buildings have CPA funds in them. So I still think I would love to see more CPA signs on our affordable housing projects, but they're both the stakeholders and previous members of the CPC have expressed similar sentiments about signage.
When you and I agree with that. I don't want there to be any sort of perception or a stigma associated with someone being in a property that received this sort of funding or is so labeled. In buildings though, where it's only like a portion of the buildings that are affordable housing, is the signs that you've been seeking on the specific units, or is it just kind of a general sign that there are units in this building that were funded with affordable housing fund? Because I could kind of see like a compromise being, still trying to get them on those buildings where it's more of a generic, a generic thing than an individual home.
I'm not sure that we have, aside from perhaps Clarendon, which is under construction now, and that might be something to broach with the housing division. Aside from Clarendon, I'm not sure we have CPA funds in any mixed income housing at the moment.
Okay.
But for a multifamily development, I would expect there to be really one sign for the development, especially those with internal hallways. There's no real
right, exactly. You don't want it on each door. We may as well put a star on them.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions, comments here? If not, I'd love to move to a vote here shortly. But I'll pause. Any other questions, comments? I see we have Eric now. Hi, Eric.
Yeah, there.
Okay. Well, if that is the case, I would welcome a motion to approve these proposed changes to the AHT MOA general conditions as proposed by Roberta.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, Roberta, would you please call the roll?
David?
Yes.
Mary Jo?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Carlos?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And Ryan?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
All right, let's move on to the next. We're sticking with AHT. This is about the recommended distribution and the timing of our distribution to AHT. So, Roberta, you want to briefly introduce this concept?
Sure. So as a process improvement this year, I would like to propose moving the Affordable Housing Trust transfer to the July agenda this month instead of holding on to the Affordable Housing Trust commitment until the CPC's other application decisions, as we've done the last several years. I'm not sure if that's the way it's always been done, but it would make sense since you've already expressed this commitment if we make that transfer to the Affordable Housing Trust right away. Then when the CPC reviews the adjusted budget in the fall, you all may consider an additional supplemental transfer to the Affordable Housing Trust at that time, rather than waiting to make one big transfer. So I've included a draft recommendation letter in the meeting packet if you'd like to make that vote this evening. I will bring that meeting packet
Oh, that'd be great if you don't mind sharing it.
to you right now.
Anybody with any questions, comments about the timing for AHT funding distribution?
Has the way that it's been done up till now caused them grief? In other words, has there been times they wish they had the resources sooner and it affected their project timing?
I can't speak about project timing, and I would invite Lisa to follow up if you want to address this question. But I can say that last year, due to an error on my part, they weren't actually able to receive the transfer until about May. I made an error back in January, which took a few months to fully correct. And so it was, um, it, rather than potentially in July when we said we would give them the money, they had to wait until May to get the money from us.
Does the transfer still need approval of the city council, same as all the other?
Yes.
Do they normally do all of them in one swell swoop? Or
They approve the recommendations whenever we give them recommendations. So when we often have off-cycle recommendations, or we might make a recommendation to extend a contract or something else that has to go through the council, and they just take it when we give it to them.
okay, so it's not like this will throw a loop to them or kind of confuse them about why they're getting something in July.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this one? I myself am in support. I think we've made clear our dedication to affordable housing funds within this group, and getting them the money as soon as possible once we've made that determination makes sense to me. But welcome any other comments or perspectives. Okay, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to recommend the adjusted distribution timing to the Affordable Housing Trust as drafted by Roberta in the meeting packet?
That would be a recommendation that a total of $2,630,071 be awarded to the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust from the CPA Housing Reserve.
And that number reflects the table you put up earlier in this meeting with like the change in the interest withholding or
that number reflects the amount that was budgeted this fiscal year. So if you'd like, I can pull up the budget again. It's actually in the meeting packet in the eligibility, the funding cycle, FY26 funding cycle financial worksheet.
Yeah.
And the last of 3 tabs. No.
The third tab, CPA fiscal year 25 budget.
Yeah, it is actually 26 budget. I can make that change.
But this
Um,
reflects 55% allocation that we voted on
Yeah.
back in May, I guess.
Yeah. And let me see if I can change the screen share. There we go, share. I swear, no matter how many times I change the year that the budget is, there's always another label somewhere that I that I miss. Okay. So that is the amount that's shown, $2,630,071 is the amount that is awarded to the housing trust after subtracting debt service for housing projects.
Okay, thank you. One just editing comment on the letters, the link at the end of the project description, you use a different acronym than you use throughout the document.
So SAHT rather than AHT.
Well, you use AHT throughout the document, and then you call it SAHT, which I personally found confusing. I mean, I figured it out. But
I get it. Yeah. I can use SAH. Yep. I'll make that change. I don't want to confuse anyone or make them irritated.
well, giving the money.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Any other comments, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this transfer.
I'll second.
All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
Roberta. Please call the roll.
I will call the roll. Mary Jo,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Carlos,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Ryan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Moving on.
Thank you again to Lisa for joining us this evening.
Oh, yes. If Lisa's still, yes, I see you're there. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. Moving on. Reviewing the eligibility determination forms, the EDFs, and the screening forms. This, I think, is not going for a vote, but it's just to get some information out there and get questions or comments from us. So, Roberta, do you want to walk through those?
Sure. So the eligibility determination forms are provided in the meeting packet, as well as the Excel workbook, which summarizes the project pipeline and funding availability for this grant cycle. I do have to apologize if you read all of the eligibility determination forms before this afternoon. You would have read incomplete forms. I just discovered this afternoon that I had not captured all of the information that was on the forms in the printouts that I made. So I just corrected that and put the complete versions in the folder. The one that is most impacted by that change is the Somerville Museum, which they describe 8, I think, artifacts that they want to make improvements to in this funding cycle. So that information is all now complete in the meeting packet. I've also mentioned in the spreadsheet projects for which we've received screening forms. These are an optional step that I use to document inquiries about potential CPA projects. I didn't actually share the forms with you themselves because the forms don't often contain enough useful information, and these aren't necessarily projects that have officially applied anyway. But I included notes on the discussions that followed with the prospective applicants and staff, because people may ask in the future, well, didn't so-and-so ask for CPA support? And I want to be as transparent as I can in documenting what inquiries have occurred and how we've responded to those inquiries. I will be conferring with the law and historic preservation planner to evaluate project eligibility over the next few weeks, and I will send a detailed letter to each prospective applicant explaining what the next steps are for their applications. And I wanted to also point out to all of you and to the applicants that the early indications are that this will be a highly competitive funding round. And I aim to give all of the applicants support so that they can make the best case that they can for their projects. So I'll invite all of you to let me know if there's anything in general that you'd like me to convey or information that you'd like to ask of the applicants that will help you to make a decision in December. And I can share the screen so that we can see the eligibility determination forms if you have questions about any specific ones of those.
Roberta, while you're preparing to share screen, this is my first full funding cycle. And so I guess I just want to make sure I understand when someone submits the eligibility determination form, is that their first contact with you? Or do they almost have like I don't want to call it an interview, but like a brainstorming with you, and then that leads them to fill out the form? Or how does it how does first contact occur? And does it always, are they reaching out to you, or do sometimes they just send the form in?
So if they've made any prior contact about potentially applying, that's reflected in the screening form column. And in some cases, for example, you can see 165 Broadway had that is actually a city-owned building that had sent a screening form last year and followed up during the year with questions for the mayor's office about whether it could be possible to use CPA funds to make improvements to that building. So there was some prior discussion, and I try to reflect that, but they didn't actually move forward with an application. And many of the other eligibility determination forms, we did have discussions about potential applications.
Roberta, I have a kind of a sideways question. Are these eligibility forms public?
Yes, everything that's in your meeting
The
packet
folders are public.
is public.
Okay, great.
And I would note that on the CPA webpage, there is, if you go to the city CPA webpage, you can see a button for documents. And under documents, there are meeting packets. There's also CPA applications. And I put all of the EDFs and applications that we ever receive into that location. So if you're ever looking for them, you can find them.
Yeah, thank you.
Roberta, I'm really pumped that this is going to be a competitive round. It just goes to show how great a job you have been at coordinating all the public outreach and trying to get more and more applicants to apply. It's a very positive result. I'm really excited.
Thank you.
Since you were asking for feedback on things that might be important for us to consider just in terms of high level feedback for applicants, I had two key metrics that I think I would like to see some information on if it is something that the applicants can pull together. One is how our CPA dollars can be leveraged for, additional dollars or additional benefit. That's one of the things that makes the Affordable Housing Trust such a no-brainer to me, is just that it amplifies the amount of support we can provide the community. And then the second might be how much public engagement some of these providers have. If push came to shove and we only had, an extra 50 or 100K left, I might bias myself towards the property that has more public engagement, has more visitors, has a lot of activity over one that isn't as engaging with the community, whether it be year round or just having seasonal open festivities or things like that. The more active the applicant is, the more excited I'm going to be about trying to find a way to get them the funds they need. So just some feedback off the top there, since you asked.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay. Anything else to discuss on this one? All right. Eric, are you talking to us?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay.
The only question that comes to mind, I don't know how we would even flesh this out because no one's going to really put all their cards on the table, is how critical this funding is to their project and whether it can truly happen without it, or how critical their need for it is versus whether it's just something they've been wanting to do. Is it something that's, the building can't be occupied, or kind of to get those details? I know people often will like to catastrophize and dramatize, describe things in more dire ways. So is there any way to kind of evaluate that aspect too? I don't know how you'd put that on a form for people to, rank their urgency. They'll put 10.
Thanks. Yeah. I imagine what I'm likely to do is in the eligibility determination letters to maybe I could even add this. That's a good idea to put it on the form. Some of the criteria that the CPC will be evaluating using to rank the projects. We have our published evaluation criteria, and I think the things that you're stating are within that matrix, but I think like what's floating to the top for you right now is probably going to be more heavily weighted than maybe some of the other things that are on the matrix. So I'll find a way to convey it.
Yeah, I think these are things that we've talked about in funding cycles past. And Roberta, remember you used to have kind of the evaluation form that you distribute. And I think different iterations of this organization have had different ideas of, whether that's a guide or like a really numeric ranking system. And I think that generally, at least most recently, we've kind of, I'm speaking for myself, was more comfortable with it as a guide than trying to develop an actual numeric ranking system where we put these things down and then add up the numbers and figure out who's at the top.
Yeah, the numeric ranking system really didn't seem to work for us when we tried it out. Lesson learned.
There's a lot of externality. I mean, there's a lot of things where on the one hand, you want to reward the people that have, like, like Ryan was saying, or Michael was saying, this larger presence, and then on the flip side, at least for me, I don't want to penalize fund requesters that don't have the wherewithal or the experience or to be kind of creating that sort of social media. But like Eric is saying, the project is still really important, and it still complies with what we're trying to do with the funding, so to me, it's kind of this balancing act.
All good points. All right, any last comments on this one before we move on? All right, thank you for that. All right, next item on here, historic preservation consultant update, which I understand is an output of a conversation that I was not involved in last month. regarding hiring a consultant regarding CPA program historic preservation guidelines. Anything else you want to tee up on this one, Roberta?
Thank you. I will just provide the update on the conversation that we had last time. So we talked last month about whether to hire a consultant to help us draft new guidelines, procedures, and conditions for our historic preservation grant program. And there was a consensus at last month's meeting to go ahead and proceed with this to help the CPC redefine how the program works. So with that, I went ahead and finished a draft of an RFP, and the RFP has actually been issued to hire a consultant with bids due August 4th. If the project is able to get off to an efficient start, we may actually have some guidance in time to inform the conditions for this year's funding round at this rate. That's the best case scenario. It may be that we're still in transition this funding round and can fully implement the recommendations next year. I think there will at least be some more information to help the CPC's discussion when you deliberate this funding round. So I actually provided the RFP in the meeting packet, and I wanted to make a note that I included in the RFP a not to exceed budget of $30,000. I expect that this project will cost less than $30,000. I don't have any examples of comparable projects to base the expectation on, but I feel like that's a very outside figure of what it might take to do the work that we've requested. So I just wanted to provide that update. Any questions or comments?
All right. Thank you for the update. All right, let's move on then.
Yeah, I have a very quick. Roberta, who's going to review the proposals? How is that decision to be made?
That's actually a really good question. So I'll be on the team, and I've just late last week was able to have a discussion with the director of OSPCD who had been away on vacation during the time that I was developing and posting the RFP. And we agreed that we need to set up a review panel. If any committee members would like to be part of the review panel to select that consultant, I would be happy to include someone.
Nominate Eric.
Second that nomination.
Eric's, I'm sure, looking for something to do to fill his free time.
Suddenly the 5-hour drive seems nice. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, it would make sense that I do that. So sure.
Thanks. And in addition to the review panel, we'll also be looking for a committee member to be part of like a steering committee for this project. So you might, again, be the best committee member to tap for that as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, I'm assuming it's not going to be like 45 applicants that we're interviewing, and it'll be a pretty small pool of people that actually do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Thanks, Eric. I don't know whether people were coming at you in jest or in seriousness, but we appreciate your willingness to step up.
It's my pleasure.
I never jest.
All right. Anything else on this one? All right. I'm going to keep us rolling. Heading down the home stretch here. So let's go for the Adams Magoon House recommendation. I understand this is a practically ancient CPC discussion from years ago that we're revisiting tonight, hopefully briefly. Roberta, you want to intro this one?
Sure. So this is a perfect example of why we need the consultant project. Back in 2023, the CPC recommended funding for restoration of the Adams Magoon House after using administrative funds for a consultant to prepare a condition assessment and the grant application itself, which is what I included in the meeting packet. I'm going to pull up um, the recommendation that the CPC made and share that. Beautiful report that was included in the application, if you had a chance to look at that. A model for condition assessments that I would like to see every applicant be able to, every CPA historic preservation project have that quality of condition assessment. And I am queuing up to share there. Okay. Hold on a moment. I'm going to stop share for a moment because things are a little bit jumbled on my screen and I can't navigate. Okay. So back in 2023, the CPC enthusiastically supported this project because of the unique significance of this building to Somerville's history. The CPC at the time would like to have funded the entire request of $463,000, but the property owner only felt comfortable making the most urgent repairs at the time. I'm sorry, I didn't share the screen with you, but that's okay. I'll pull it up later. Hence the CPC recommendation of $150,000. This being the first large grant on a privately owned property in Somerville, the CPC spent several months discussing a set of conditions that would protect the historic house and ensure that the CPA funds serve a public benefit. We were advised by the law department that the property owner should sign a memorandum of understanding stating that she would agree to the terms of the grant before the recommendation could be given to City Council for approval. And now I will share the actual funding recommendation for $150,000. You can see why the committee was so enthusiastic about the project. It was one of Somerville's oldest structures, the most visible and best preserved of its era. And the conditions that the CPC agreed after several months of discussion included that the property will be placed under a covenant that requires the funds to be repaid to the city upon sale of the property within 50 years. So this is not a clawback. This is saying that if the property is ever sold within 50 years, I mean, it's not a clawback because of a change in the property. It's a clawback because of change of ownership, that the funds would have to be repaid to the CPC, even if the property is still in pristine condition. The city will have the right of first refusal to acquire the property at the time of sale. The grantee agrees to execute and record a perpetual preservation restriction on the property governing exterior and interior alterations. The restriction will include a provision that the house remain visible from the street and will not be obscured by vegetation or the erection of a fence or other structure between Broadway and the existing fence at the rear of the house. A permanent sign with interpretive information will be installed at the front of the property, visible from the sidewalk. Upon commencement of the project, the grantee agrees to post a sign stating that the project was funded through the CPA program. The CPA funded portion must be initiated within 3 years. and the CPA funds will only be used for eligible expenses. The controversial conditions were really the first three conditions here. And so the applicant grantee did not agree to the terms of the letter, the recommendation by the CPC. And so the recommendation was never sent to City Council as a result. So in the ever since 2023, we've been carrying forward that $150,000 recommendation, or the $150,000, not spending it in case we ever send it to the City Council. We would have those funds still set aside for this project. But what I'd like to ask of you this evening is to formally vote to cancel this recommendation now so that we can stop holding those funds. This project, as I said before, exemplifies the need for consulting to refine our CPA guidelines and conditions. I would ask the applicant if she would be willing to be interviewed by the consultants. And if the CPC adopts new conditions that are different from the ones that we originally included in her recommendation, I would ask the property owner to consider reapplying if new conditions are acceptable to her. And if so, we might ask the consultants to provide an update of the cost estimate from their original assessment.
Michael.
Thank you. Is there any risk in delaying the applicant's kind of reevaluation, waiting for updated guidance with regards to the state of the building? Like, is delaying these, if that adds risk, is there any reason for us to try to consider amendment, tonight or at our next meeting, for example?
I would need to consult with the applicant to assess her readiness and willingness to proceed should you change the conditions. That's an option that I hadn't put on the table until now.
Okay. Yeah, just to make sure I'm crystallizing what I'm trying to communicate. If for some reason it's really important for us to take care of some of these low-hanging fruit things, like making sure that there's not further exterior damage or something like that, I'd be willing to try to work with this group to amend before we get that feedback from the consultant. So and again, just in the interest of trying to protect the property and the historic nature of the building.
It was really the first. I think that she would have been amenable to the permanent preservation restriction, including the interior. It's really incredible how the interior of the house is preserved in its original state, as well as the exterior. She would be amenable to that. It's the fact that the grant is repayable is the sticking point for her, even upon sale of the building.
I remember
Roberta, go ahead. Sorry, David.
I remember the report was very detailed. It was like one of the best I'd seen come to our desk there. They had a real preservation consultant that went through every window and everything. And that might give some guidance to that, to answer that question in there. Yeah, sorry, Ryan.
No, it's okay. I was just going to ask Roberta, would the freeing up of this 150,000 that's been held have any effect on the available cash for us to fund deals or proposals this year?
It certainly would. That would be $150,000 that reappears in our available funds that has not been available.
Is there a reason, Roberta, since we're now just trying to bring a consultant on and may have guidelines that we would be able to use to revise this agreement, even in this funding cycle, is there a reason to vote to cancel it, or could we get those recommendations and amend it unilaterally?
I think that, you're the committee. And if you would prefer to amend the recommendation to remove the offending condition,
Well, or at least bring it in line with what the the commission decides is a reasonable path forward for these sorts of applications. I guess I'm just kind of wondering, after having held it for these last 2 or 3 years, why now when we're about to get a consultant, report to give us some guidelines on how to address these sort of applications. I do
it's
appreciate
also,
that it frees up the money, but I still
Yeah.
feel like I don't know. I guess I'm not uncomfortable with us holding off and waiting until we get a recommendation to figure out whether that's something that we can work with this homeowner.
that's actually a good suggestion. The reason why I brought this now is because I had back at the beginning of the year, you could find the agenda calendar, dropped this into the summer meeting because this is the time when we have time to have discussions like this, more than in the fall or early spring. So that was what drove the timing of my
Yeah.
putting this on the agenda. But if you would prefer to continue holding the funds that you had recommended for this project until we have recommendations from the consultant, that's, I think, also a good alternative.
Yeah. And I absolutely appreciate, your interest in kind of clearing our docket of these sort of things. But given the timing that you're just going out now, for a consultant report, I feel like it would be, ever so slightly less bureaucratic if we just kind of carry this forward and then are able to work with her with the application she's already filed rather than make her resubmit, under another guideline or another funding cycle. But
Yep.
that's just
Anybody, anybody feel similarly or differently?
I agree. I think that it would be better to keep this project sort of in a low simmer, just because it's been 3 years already, and this year would be wiped out. So be looking at 5 years, like the project is probably already $150,000 more expensive than it would have been 3 years ago already. So, and we could also sort of use it as maybe as a virtual testing ground with our consultants when, like you said, we could engage with this particular client and say, like, what sort of clawback would work. 50 years is an awful long time, but
yeah.
Or is it exempt within families or all sorts of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it was going to exempt her family so that her kids could inherit the house within 50
Okay.
years, but if it was sold outside of the family, I think the committee at the time wanted to avoid a private property owner receiving a windfall from CPA, but the CPC is also acquiring a permanent deed restriction that extends to the interior of her house. So there's already, I think, a public benefit that's being acquired with the CPA funds. So and this was such a difficult decision for the CPC to make at the time. The committee members, like I said, spent a long time deliberating and getting input from different parties, that I think it's really fair to like give this more consideration than just.
And in our defense, I think the city law department wanted a 99 year
Oh, wow.
I mean, I think it was a really tough.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that it ought to be like a 5-year, like a much more short-term thing, just to keep a more immediate developer from benefiting and cashing out right away. Because once it's been a while, the public benefit is just that we helped maintain this historic structure, regardless of who owns it. So in a way.
Yeah, and to that, and another thing we talked about a lot, Eric, was some sort of a declining clawback, because the work that had been put into it was had a lifetime of whatever as well. I mean, like Roberta says, it was a really complicated. There were a lot of discussion, a lot of complicated stuff. And to some extent, I really feel, I may be remembering this wrong, but I really think that the law department really kind of drove this idea that there had to be a clawback.
Roberta, can I just ask one reminder thing? If, for example, the feedback from the historic study ends up taking long enough that we're starting to consider our final funding for the year, can you just remind us to potentially think about canceling this one in order to have another project make the hurdle? I really liked the chair's comment about that, and I just want to make sure we remember when we get there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good note. Thank you. Okay, anybody else that feels maybe differently from what I'm hearing is the kind of leading proposal to defer, I think not take a vote on this item tonight. Does anybody feel strongly otherwise? Okay. With that, I think we can go ahead and say, Roberta, that we'll table this one and see how things play out with the historic consultant. Is that fair?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, we are almost at our time here. So looking at, we have 3 items left on the agenda. Roberta, in thinking of prioritizing among these, the draft change to the the CPA ordinance, this is related to terms. Maybe this is a really fast one, I think. So maybe we can take this on and then defer the others to the next meeting. Is that reasonable?
As you wish. So draft change to the CPA ordinance. At the last meeting, the CPC requested that I look into how we could request an amendment to the CPA ordinance so that we can allow people who fill partial terms to be reappointed for up to 2 full terms. I drafted some recommended changes to the ordinance, which were included in the meeting packet. And I'm now working with the Intergovernmental Affairs Department to see how to advance the request, and wanted to see if there are any questions from CPC members about the recommendation or the proposal that I put in the packet.
Any questions or comments?
I might be able to move very quickly through the next couple of things.
Okay. If no questions or comments from anybody on that, I think we can charge forth. I think.
Okay.
Oh, Michael, did you have something?
No, do we need to vote to approve?
No, I don't think any vote is necessary.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
So public outreach and committee recruitment, we're following the committee recruitment plan. It was actually just posted today that we're looking for a new committee member. The selection panel is almost all set. I'm still working on a PSEF member, but we have a month to work that out. And I will be sending out a newsletter to advertise the position. So you'll see an announcement soon. Share that with folks who you know who might be interested in applying. I did put in the meeting packet. I won't pull it up right now, but the schedule of tabling events. There is one upcoming tabling event actually in 2 weeks on August 5th. And if anybody would be available, I would love to have company. That is for National Night Out. It's located at Dilboy Stadium. And I haven't been to the one in Somerville before, but National Night Out events that I've been to are kind of interesting because they bring a very different crowd than come to a lot of the events that we typically table at. And in particular, it's located next to a public housing site. So a lot of people who often don't come to other events will come to this one. So,
Roberta, I'd be interested because so many of the tablings have been on weekends and this one is on a weeknight. That works well for me.
okay. I will be in touch with you afterward then about meeting me at National Night Out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. And please, you can put your name, I think if you can't edit, you can let me know if I can put your name on the other tabling events that are on the calendar. We actually don't have a date scheduled for Davis Square because they are so flexible. They really let us come whenever we want to. So we can pick a Wednesday or a couple of Wednesdays anytime to table at Davis Square. Administrative budget, I included in the meeting packet, revised administrative budget reflecting the conversation that we had last month about the affordable housing staff administrator. So removing the proportion that had been included for that position. But one other piece of information that's come in since last month's meeting is a bill for annual membership for the Community Preservation Coalition. We've always been a member of the coalition. This year, we're bumped up to a higher membership cost tier of $10,000 for the coalition based on the size of our budget. So I would like to get the committee's approval for me to spend $10,000 for our coalition membership.
And this
Any questions on that, or
this comes out of our admin budget, I assume?
Yes.
And Roberta, I imagine that the coalition provides a lot of important resources informationally, where you're comparing notes with your counterparts and that sort of thing.
I use them all the time to track data because they publish data about the CPA program, use them for technical assistance. They are there to very promptly answer any questions that we have or point us to resource people who can answer questions. And the other thing they do is advocacy at the State House to sometimes actually increase the CPA funding that the state gives us, or at least to not cut CPA funding, depending on the mood, Capitol Hill. So those are the roles that the coalition plays.
Is it 10,000 or 11,000?
10,000.
It says 11,000 for 2026 on your.
But it's also APA. So it's
oh, is that okay? So
isn't that right?
more,
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So it's 1,000 for APA and 10,000 for the coalition. Okay.
Yes, that's right. And it does. APA doesn't actually cost 1,000. I round up so that there's always money in the account. It gets dumped back into the program funding at the end of the year if it's unspent.
Yeah, fine with me.
Great. Thank you all. I don't think we need a vote, but just if you all growled at me and said no, don't, I would take that feedback. So just a couple of other items I wanted to mention. The social meeting. So far, I only have responses from a couple of you to the social meeting, so I am going to drop into the chat the doodle poll so that you can let me know your availability.
Right. I confess, I only saw that like 2 days ago when I was looking for the meeting packet for tonight, and I was like, oh goodness, I missed that. So yeah, I'll definitely fill that out.
All right. And I wanted to remind you of the Mayor's Volunteer Appreciation Night on August 11th, 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the West Branch Library. And please RSVP to M. Rosario by July 28. And I'm going to put her email address also in the chat so that you can RSVP. And those are all of the notes that I remembered to write down. So whatever I have forgotten, and I'm sure there is something, we'll have to wait for next time.
All right. Thanks for blitzing through that, Roberta. Okay, if nothing else, I think we can have anybody like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
All right.
Thank you, Roberta. Can you call the roll?
Yep. Carlos.
Here.
Joe.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Michael.
Aye.
David.
Yes.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
and Ryan.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you all
Thank
very,
you.
very much. Thanks, Roberta, for all your work. This was a
Yes.
lot.
Thank
This
you.
was a blitzkrieg of items. So thank you very much.
Yep.
And everybody have a great August off from
All right.
CBC.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll see
Thank
you
you.
all
Good night.
See you guys. Have a good one.
September.
You too. Bye-bye.